We've got a veritable shit ton happening on the front lines, so ready your calendars for this activist onslaught. From climate change to anti-war to fracking to pipelines of the school to prison kind, the summer lull is definitely over. Next, let's talk digital activism. Small steps become leaps, and it may start with one of these petitions. And finally, Timothy Almeida Jr., spoken word poet, artist, musician, and custodian, shares his rhymes and the life and times of the man behind the book, blog, and podcast, The Custodian Chronicles. But first, let's make friends across enemy lines. Friends across enemy lines. What makes us, you and I, hate? Who drew that line that separates human from human? How deep does that line relate to the day-to-day? Do you eat? Do you work? Do you play? Do you hope that someday the killing, barbaric blood spilling will end? What stops me from calling you friend? Who laid claim to your hate, marked it state, owned and operated, pawns on the front lines, brainwash, seek Heil, know your place, love and revere it, God bless and fear it. Fight to the death, but for what? For a flag-draped casket, a bundle of flowers in a mourner's sad basket? Ask yourself this. Who do you hate and why? Take your time, for I'm sure there's a list, and I'm not a therapist, so skip the personal feuds and focus on who. Who patriots claim are better off slain, enemies born by the scores, the only good fill in the blank is a dead one. Someone's mother, someone's son, someone's brother, someone's wife. Is this the life that we yearn for? You say you're ready to burn for your freedoms, your morals, your family, your friends, but you're shadowboxing demons, shooting at ghosts, bombing for peace. How can you keep your head down? Take in the sick sounds of lies as they drip down your mind. Saw at the ties that could reconcile with them, the others, the mothers, the brothers, the daughters and sons. Line them up. Take a look, a good long look. Through the thick fog, the clog of war hawkish posits, the bog of wars waged for profit stands you, or me. Honest eyes pierce through this haze, this evil malaise, and seems to say, don't you see? The difference between you and me is so small. Our governments all take your hand and raise it in hate, fit it with guns, tell you to run from all that they tell you to fear, but oh, when the enemy's near, fire at will, shoot to kill. Regret only the ones who got away, live to fight another day, and fight you shall. Manufactured wars keep the ignorant hordes from asking these questions that I pose today. My elongated wait at the airport most likely tied to this thought that wouldn't just stay in my goddamn mind. If troops fought for freedom, they'd be fighting the system that sent them into trenches and caves, early graves, again and again. It's the same year after year, war after war, for the difference between us and the enemy is small. We are the 99. Yes, we are the 99, but those floating commands from on high, they are the 1%, hell-bent on destruction, of freedom obstruction, justice abduction, production of pawns, and yes, you are in line. And somewhere, thousands of miles away, someone else holds your place in the same fucking line. Taught to hate you, but what did you do? Exactly. You just want to live life, maybe get married, maybe not, maybe see the world, maybe raise a few kids, maybe not die in flames of some twisted game, a greedy charade. Well, don't you think that they are the same? Who wants war? Raise your hand. Who wants to watch their future crumble as empires stumble and fall over you, over me? And here is the key. If you were to see the sliver of difference, the more so resemblance of enemies, you'd see the whole. The gaping dark chasm that spans between you and your leaders, you and their leaders, them and their leaders, them and our leaders. And then you might even see humanity. Humanity's hope, like the thin thread of Damocles, all of the power elite hang by a thread that we hold. So let go. But we won't. Not till enough of us see that what made you believe it's you versus me is the greatest lie they ever conceived. I think it's about time to open our eyes and make friends across enemy lines. From tweets to marching in the streets, this is Act Out. Welcome to Act Out. I'm Eleanor Goldfield, and this is your tipping point. Despite this lovely, somewhat hot and humid summer ambiance, we are meters away. And jump on the Eventric bandwagon, America, please. We are mere meters away from the White House. which casts a dark, creepy shadow over pretty much everything within a 10-mile radius. So, to lift my spirits and yours, grab your calendar and let's head to the front lines. First off, a reminder to all my fellow Americans, Congress comes back into session next Tuesday, and there's a lot on the agenda, from the TPP to the Iran deal. And there's plenty of brewing in the activist world, so be sure to check our Facebook and Twitter feeds to stay up to date, as we can't always fit every tantalizing tidbit into the show. But here are a few tidbits that we can fit. First up, as I mentioned in last week's show, next Tuesday, September 8th, will be Code Pink's Hands Across the Capitol in support of the Iran deal event in D.C. You actually hear one of their events in the background right now. The event will consist of an action outside of Congress as a direct response to the flood of money and pro-war lobbyists that will be flowing through the halls of the Capitol next week. Code Pink will also be unveiling the Peace Insurrection Encampment, which will stay erected outside of Congress until September 17th, when Congress must reach a decision on the Iran deal. More information on that awesomeness can be found on Facebook via searching for the event name or visiting their Facebook page at facebook.com/CodePinkAlert. Next up, let's talk school-to-prison pipeline. For those of you who are unfamiliar with that term, the ACLU defines it as a disturbing national trend wherein children are funneled out of public schools and into the juvenile and criminal justice systems. Many of these children have learning disabilities or histories of poverty, abuse, or neglect, and would benefit greatly from additional educational and counseling services. Instead, they're isolated, punished, and pushed out. In other words, or as I would put it, our racist, classist, fucked up system takes kids and shoves them into prisons, choosing to spend money on their chains rather than their brains. So, in Boston on September 10th, the Center for Church and Prison Incorporated, an organization that works to combat incarceration and recidivism, via relationships with community leaders, religious and non-religious organizations, and offers a bevy of facts and educational information on its site. They will be hosting a conference on ending mass incarceration and the school-to-prison pipeline titled Mass Educate, Don't Mass Incarcerate. It'll be a 2-day conference focused on advocacy, educational campaigns, and direct intervention. For more information on that, check out churchandprison.org. And for more info on the school-to-prison pipeline, take a screenshot of this and just let these horrendous facts bore into your mind till they find the switch to activate. Moving on, from September 8th through September 25th, Beyond Extreme Energy, you may remember their work from a previous episode, will be back at FERC, the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, to take a stand against this horrendously corrupt government agency handing out new permits for fracking like condoms at a pride parade, but way less cool. Because instead of fucking, they're fracking, that most odious practice of drilling into the ground, injecting millions and millions of gallons of fresh water mixed with hundreds of chemicals, blasting through mountaintops, causing earthquakes, and the subsequent release of these horrendously poisonous chemicals into, the air and the water. Groundwater supplies poisoned, cancer rates rise, otherwise beautiful mountain areas become wastelands of chemical runoff. The clean alternative to oil. By the way, check out that site, dangersoffracking.com, a brilliant graphic representation of what fracking is and what it does. So, back to BXE and FERC. Well, FERC has been the minion of the fracking industry since day one. And despite continued efforts by BXE and other groups, their rubber stamping process for the fracking industry has not ceased or lessened. So, BXE is kicking it up a notch. One hell of a notch, actually. They're going to fast. They're going to fast and occupy the space outside of FERC for those 17 days until September 25th, the day that the Pope is scheduled to speak to the United Nations on climate change. The day before, on September 24th, the Pope is scheduled to address Congress. And on September 24th, BXE will participate in a large rally on the Mall, organized by Moral Action for Climate Justice. BXE also has several more climate change support actions planned throughout the time of the fast as well, including, but not limited to, Grandparents' Climate Action Day, September 9th and 10th, the Global Catholic Climate Movement, which will also be fasting in McPherson Square, September 14th through 23rd, and Rising Tides Flood the System campaign that has ongoing actions planned throughout the fall, leading up to the climate talks in Paris in December. Now, I don't remember a damn thing unless I write it down, and I know that's a lot to take in. So, take a look at this next slide to see all of this written out. And you know me, I will probably end up repeating it like the Jewish mother that I am. Before we cut to that slide, let me leave you with this message from BXE. We are undertaking the fast in September to show our support for the call of Pope Francis for urgent action to move away from coal, oil, and gas, and to a renewables and energy efficiency-based economy, which respects and protects our natural environment and the people. We welcome solidarity fasts in frontline communities fighting gas infrastructure expansion, at offices of relevant public officials or members of Congress, at the offices of energy companies, or at fracking, pipeline, compressor station, storage terminal, or LNG export sites. We encourage families, schools, faith communities, and civic organizations to organize rolling fasts among their members during this time period of September 8th through 25th, whereby each person may only fast for a day or two, but together their group's voices are added to the call for radical change at FERC. You can get more information on this action and others at their site, beyondextremeenergy.org, and email actions@beyondextremeenergy.org, or fill out the online form to join in solidarity and or in fasting. Now let's shift from the front lines of DC to the digital domain of dissent, namely online petitions. People seem a bit splintered on the online petition front. Some say it's pointless because no one gives a shit if you sign a petition to save the whales or stop fracking or end corruption. Other people say it does matter, that members of Congress do raise an eyebrow when thousands of petitions come flooding into their email or their office. Here's what I say. Don't knock it till you try it, and don't ever knock anything that promotes awareness and the people playing fucking an active role in their government. Yeah, I know that our government is more twisted than Heath Ledger's Joker, and of course it's gonna take more than an online petition to produce the change that we fight for, and the change that we deserve. But it's a step. It's a gateway drug, if you will, for many an apathetic or uninvolved citizen. It allows people to start small and grow we must. Whether you start small with a tweet or indeed a petition, take 5 minutes. Seriously, give me 5 fucking minutes of your day. Just skip that Us Weekly post about who's fucking who and do this one thing for me. Not for me, for you. Think of what you can do that already fits into your day. Like sharing these movements and news with people at work, at school, in line at the grocery store. If you're in school, write a paper on it. Suggest speakers or performers like Matt Cedillo who have some important shit to say. Put up flyers. At work, suggest a recycling bin. Talk about GMOs around the water cooler, or talk about how fucked up it is that you have a plastic water cooler and paper cups. In other words, take whatever it is that fits already into your daily life, and I guarantee that there's a political parallel. Whatever your passion is, use that to drive your activism. Start small. Start with that thing you use to look at cat videos in the palm of your hand. Start there, and then grow. From that water cooler, you may spearhead the fight to unionize. From this online petition, you may add to a growing movement of thousands, spilling from the digital realm into the streets. Quite literally, from tweets to marching in the streets. So on that note, I want to introduce you to a site that specializes in raising the voice of the people through online petitioning and education. Root Strikers is an online portal for digital activism. It features a variety of issues, most notably money in politics and systemic corruption. It invites you to read up on issues and add your voice to current fights for our rights and the reform of a very, very fucked up system. So, now that I've already pulled you people away from the Us Weekly, go ahead and take a look at rootstrikers.org. It'll probably take you about 10 seconds to scan and find something you want to click on. Lend your voice to that. So go ahead. Be that petition signer. Finally this week, I have a very, very special treat for you. My good friend Timothy Almeida Jr., whom I've had the honor of sharing the stage and collaborating with, was here this past weekend for some impromptu badassery in the Devil's Den. We captured some of his spoken word and caught up with him on his music, his upcoming book, and the life and times of the man behind the Custodian Chronicles. Take a look.
Good cop, bad cop. No cop, God. Walking the yard, I strapped on my boots and tried to salute, but realized the salute was meant for the troops. So what exactly has my job become? So you, sir, are not a danger to society, but the brass wants to fire me, and all I want to do is handle real police work. But work is now revenue collection, and my country is nothing more than a gigantic house of detention. And the war on drugs, well, that's a complete waste of time and resources, so please carry on, light that up, and take a hit from me. The NYPD has made me a prisoner in a blue uniform, and in return, I have made prisoners whose uniform is worn the same way, but only in orange. And if orange is the new black, then the fact that over 1 million human beings in jail are black, it would seem to me that we are falling off track. Hold up. A no-knock warrant on the wrong household. I'm sorry I shot your dog in the face, ransacked your living space, and disappeared without a trace. You can file a complaint with the county clerk, take a number, cross your fingers, and hope that it works. A good cop pulled a man out of a car that was on fire. A bad cop made a good cop out to be a liar, and so the good cop had to opt out early and retire, while the bad cop kept stealing drugs and money from evidence. Thank you, good cops, for understanding that this plant here serves as our medicine. No cop is above or below peaceful citizens, but some citizens think that all cops are God, and in return, all cops are cast into the stereotype of one or the other. When will the good cops start calling out the bad cops and putting them in prison in return for the thousands of innocent men, children, and women who sit in a cell in a private hell for a crime that had no victim? Yo. The Nixon administration handpicked them. SWAT teams became paramilitary units whose sole objective was asset forfeiture. The poor became the target of Reagan, reinforced that market, and now the land of the free is really the land of the green paper that comes from the tree of the branches of 3 corrupt government functions whose sole purpose is to serve dysfunction. What we need now is for all the good cops to march on the Capitol and arrest all the bad people who allow all the bad cops to carry out war on all the good people, all in the name of a God who apparently grants permission to all the bad cops to kill all the good people and put all the good cops in a bad position. So what are we missing? The symbols with which we equate our identification when we step out the front porch into a nation founded on occupation can no longer be associated with accurate information. The hand that holds the keys, that's the same hand that built the lock. Good cop, bad cop, no cop, stop. Whether you believe in God or not is irrelevant. The complex chooses war as a complexity and keeps selling it. The school children idolize a revitalized story and teachers keep telling it. The freedom seekers look for peace and all along we keep yelling it. Choose your belief, death, money, or taxes. Corporate politics and disingenuous masses. Sensitivity and compassion when all or nothing passes, for the writing on the wall is filled with insensitivity and brashness. We lash whips and like cancer sticks, like college girls who used to dance but strip, and turn tricks while politicians burn the bridge. We learn to live but never give, while what we earn is barely enough to feed and clothe my brother's kid. So am I my sister's keeper? The Grim Reaper has a sickle in the form of a sickle cellular innkeeper whose keys cannot keep away the people ready to burn the fake preacher. Behind the cast iron gates is a pack of wolves ready to reach you, passing notes plotting when and where the next bomb will drop and annihilate the weaker. It is them who are we, 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue in Northwest DC, where the sky bleeds reds and symbolism roams free. And people look at me like what I'm saying isn't hitting home, when we're hitting homes with ballistic, tomahawk missiles and drones. Obsessed with iPhones so we can't put the we before I. Willing to comply with any lie devised to conquer and divide. We ignore the galaxy unless we hold it in the palm of our hand, when Uncle Sam sung and hypnotized 55 million children across this land. But still I stand for one love, one universe, and one people. Where people don't praise the corporate snakes and clergy crooks and church steeples. Define what is legal, no victim, no crime. Design the picture with your own hand or keep standing in line. Act up or lay down. Stand up or waste time. There is but one life to live, and I am diligent with mine.
How did somebody as intelligent and talented as you start writing or first of all, how did you end up as a custodian, and how did that spur you to write the Custodian Chronicles?
That's a good question. I guess I kind of got into the school system when I was around 18, just as temporary job work, and I bounced around back and forth in it throughout the years. And then I think by the time I hit 30, I still had some connections in there. So I just took the job more for security reasons. Still pursuing all my passions on the outside, but using that job as a way to, fuel my other things that I was doing. And the book started to just kind of organically manifest, like as I'd be cleaning, mopping, just doing the random, normal, everyday, mundane bullshit. And I just started jotting ideas down, and it probably took me about 2 years to write it, but it started as I just started writing about, the first chapter is called Pissy Walls and Shitty Halls or something like that. And I just went from there, and I was like, I think I have something here, so I wrote the book, and I think it's pretty insightful, humorous, but it's a take. It's an actual take. There's something serious behind it, so we'll see. I mean, I kind of left it open-ended. Maybe I could do a part 2, but my goal is to use the book to get out of being a custodian, because I don't enjoy the grind, the daily grind. I don't think anybody does, but,
And it is like the tagline of the book says, it is a perspective that you don't hear about in the education system. It's always like students or teachers or parents. So what are you hoping that, besides this really unique perspective, what are you hoping that people get from the book?
Well, I think there's a general misconception about when people take on certain titles in any aspect of society. We take on these titles, these job roles, and then people automatically think that defines who we are as human beings. So my goal really is to kind of break that mold. It's for a custodian, which it's sad that people think this way, but people wouldn't expect a custodian. Oh, he's, a janitor wrote a book. I thought janitors were all, crazy old drunks. I mean, a lot of us fucking are, but I'm not. So I really think one of my biggest goals is to really break some ground in terms of that, and getting people to understand that, who we are as human beings is not necessarily defined by one thing we do, and especially not defined by what we do to survive, because it's really what it is. When you need to make money, you need to survive. And that's what my job as a custodian is for me. It's so I can feed my family and survive right now. But it's not my end goal, and it won't be the end game for me,
So how does this tie in? Because on top of the book, you also do spoken word and you have a band. How does this tie in with those? And you mentioned your end goal. What is that end goal in terms of your creative projects?
All right. I think the way it ties in ultimately is that it continues to give me fuel for my fire. Every day I go to work, I look around, I see things that I just don't think are right. I see things that I think I can contribute to in a positive way. And I take that energy from my job, and I kind of infuse that into my band, into everything else I'm doing. So eventually I can break free of this job for good, and then still for life, use the tools I've acquired on the job mentally, not the actual tools I've used. Like I can clean a fucking bathroom, We all can clean a bathroom if we need to, but the tools I've learned, like learning how to stay in the moment, learning how not to get suicidal because I'm driving to the same building every day, doing the same thing every day, cleaning up after adults every day and children every day that aren't mine. I clean up after my old children, but I clean up after others. And I think those are the things I appreciate while I'm in it, but I want to get out and be able to always remember that hunger that drove me to excel, move past that, accomplish my goals as a human being and as a professional. I mean, that's really my end goal. And, to start kind of my own movement, I guess, in a way. So, yeah.
The Custodian Chronicles movement.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's not just a book, it's also a podcast and a blog, right?
Yeah, correct. We have, it's all about marketing and brand and imaging. So the Custodian Chronicles I thought was catchy. So I just started a Custodian Chronicles blog. I finished the book, and then we started the podcast as well. And the podcast is based off, it kind of centers around education, and then it just kind of spirals out from there, like most podcasts. But I thought it was just a unique way to bring in guests. Like if I brought you in, for example, we talk about your history and education, how much it's really molded you as a person. And I think people would be surprised how much we all feel about the education system growing up and how little it actually affects us as adults in terms of our happiness as people.
So I'm also curious, speaking of education, was your intelligence and your talent something that you got through the education system, or was that something that you created outside of that?
Yeah, this is something I actually was talking about this on the podcast the other night. My thing has always been music and athletics and martial arts. And I'm really of the belief that whether I went through the public school system or not, I would be doing those things no matter what. I do think it honed some of it in the sense that I did those things in high school, but I didn't do them nearly enough. And the focus is always on those common, the common educational practices. So sadly, and not to be a pessimist about it, I do believe a lot of it is 90% bullshit and nonsense, and it's a waste of time. And really all it is doing is kind of training kids to live the rat race life instead of inspiring some type of passion and allowing them to be children, play outside, focus on one task for more than 40 minutes if they need to. There's a big lack of freedom. And that becomes because most of the teachers that teach have been in school their whole life. So it's like any system. So you can't see outside of the system if you've never actually left it. So that's really, for me, I'd be doing this no matter what.
And how did you, because you said that you started working as a custodian when you were 18, so how did you see outside the system? Because it sounds like you were in the system as well.
Yeah, I was. I think just part human nature, this is who I am. But I also believe by taking on the job, at the time I was 18, I was a kid and I needed a job. So I think for whatever reason, the universe puts you on that path and you stay on it until you're not supposed to stay on it anymore. And I think the way I broke free was actually by being in it. And I'm still not free because I'm going every day. But mentally, it sounds self-righteous and shit, but I was able to open my mind a little bit more to understand, like, hey, this is not what it's about. This is not what it has to be if I don't want it to be. So, maybe a bit of luck and whatever.
Do you feel that because obviously this show focuses on creative activism and how that can really pull people out of apathy or pull people out of the blindness that is really taught to us. Do you feel that your focus on music and spoken word and poetry helped extract you from that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a great question too, because I feel like the first thing they ever cut in schools is arts and music. And so there's a complete lack of creativity. You're really not allowed to be creative in school. You can be creative inside of the box they give you to be creative in, but once you step out, it's like, oh, you drew a gun on a piece of paper? All right, well, we're gonna have you arrested. And this is where we've come to as a society. So I think that, that innate desire to write, to play music has really probably saved me in a lot of ways, from being a pissed off stockbroker.
Oh, God, that'd be terrible.
Sure
what a waste. All right, so I obviously have all the links that everybody can find you at. Is there anything coming up that you want to let people know about?
Just the band, the Native Alien Tribe. We have a few shows coming up. Just visit us at the Native Aliens. The book will be out January. I'm going to crowdsource the book, so probably Indiegogo. So all that info will be up by January, and hopefully we can just raise some money I would like to self-publish the book because I did it all myself anyway, and it's 2015. You can do anything you want. And other than that, the podcast is up once a week. Check it out. It's on iTunes and SoundCloud. You can get it, and yeah.
And just Google that shit. And one thing that I think is so fucking awesome, one of many, about Tim is that he doesn't have his dream job at the moment. But instead of using his job to fuel anger or depression, he uses it to fuel his creativity. He uses it to find that political parallel that exists in all of our lives, all of your jobs, your day-to-day, regardless of what you do, where you live, or who you are. And that's incredibly fucking inspiring and strong. So be sure to keep up with him on his sites that you'll see at the end of the show, and here we are. So that does it for this week's show. Please spread and share this episode and show with all of your friends, foes, and people you don't know. And on that last slide that I just mentioned 10 seconds ago, there will also be a link to help support Occupy.com and the delicious dissent delivered daily thanks to donations like yours. It is a 501c3, so anything you can contribute is tax deductible and hugely appreciated. Be sure to follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube. From guess where? Good night and act out.